Great. All right. So welcome back to another Powerhouse Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Stephana Johnson, and in the next 20 minutes, you're going to learn about the body-mind connection through Cara Bradley, who's an expert in body-mind wellness. And it's something I think we can all use as leaders right now, how to be more connected and grounded with our focus and our attention and where our attention needs to be during times of crisis and times of challenge. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Cara Bradley, the founder of a unique yoga experience in Philadelphia. It's a leading yoga studio in Philadelphia called The Verge. She's also the author of the book, The Verge, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that as we introduce and welcome Cara Bradley. Thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Stephana. It's great to be here. Love the topic.
Fantastic. So just give us a little bit more on your book. We're going to dive a little bit more into some of the things that you practice in your book and talk about and teach leaders and executives in that mind-body connection and why it's such an important investment in a leader's time and energy on that.
Yeah. Well, I have a unique position in being not only a body-mind trainer, but also being a lifelong entrepreneur. So I've had my share of wellness businesses from my young days in my early 20s to Verge Yoga, which is the yoga studio that I founded 15 years ago and just sold actually on December 31st. So I have put into practice everything that I preach. And in many ways, I don't know if I really could have been the leader that I've been and continue to be without actually practicing body-brain techniques to help me stay in optimal states.
Yeah, fantastic, for sure. Can you give us one of those aha moments, those pivotal times? You said you used to open the studio, so a couple of dozen years ago, and then before that, was there a time that was really pivotal for you that shifted how you did things that maybe brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, there were definitely a couple. I've had a very jagged path, which is both interesting and painful to remember, but I've made all the mistakes. And I think for me, there were a couple of pivots. One is that I started businesses very, very young. My first business was when I was 16. And then my first real business, I like to say, was when I was 25 and I raised money to launch a business, but I didn't have the right mentoring. And I think that being somewhat of a self-starter and independent thinker, I thought I could trudge through it myself. And I was able to do that, but it really wasn't until I found mentors that my businesses started to grow faster, be more stable, and I started to be much healthier within the business as a leader. So for me, it was finding mentors, the right mentors, and then really an understanding trends. And I've been lucky enough to be at the forefront of 3 trends now. And I think that we start to become very sensitive to what it feels like to be at the beginning of something that is ready to explode globally, and in kind of mass consciousness. So for me, it was the mentorship and specifically understanding, right, these are the signs of a trend. And that has really been informative as to when to kind of jump in, both feet in the deep end.
Interesting. So when I look at entrepreneur, I'm usually thinking those are the innovators. They're leading the trend, but you're looking, kind of observing when there is a trend and then going a little bit with the momentum of that and putting your energy towards something that's already going on.
Yeah, and I think that this is where the body sensitivity comes in. When we can learn how to read our body like we read a book, becoming fluent in the language of not only our senses, but our sensitivities, we can become more aware of what is leading edge, and what are people starting to pay attention to? And so for me specifically, it was, I was a figure skater. I was a competitive figure skater. And I happened to be in New York City at the time when rollerblade was starting to trend. And I had a sense that this was going to be something big. So I took a deeper look at it and eventually started some businesses within the inline skating world. The same happened for me in yoga. And then it was in mindfulness. And now more recently, it's in understanding mental wellness and how much our biology really informs our psychology. And I think that now, of course, mental health is top of the list in our global problems. So I'm definitely, that's exactly where I am right now, is understanding how we're moving forward in providing solutions for our mental health.
Yeah, for sure. So you've said quite a lot in all of that, and I want to unpack a couple of things here. The body senses and the body sensitivity. So can you talk a little bit about how you learn? Now, you said you're a figure skater, so there's definitely an awareness of body mechanics. You must have that because there's so much body-brain connection there. But can you go in a little bit more and maybe share some insight of what our listeners can apply maybe right now to their own sensitivity and senses to become more aware and maybe rise above the being the effect of all that ultra sensitivity now, and maybe understanding a little bit more. And it sounds to me like you're actually utilizing that awareness as a way to catapult your success and to foster and forward well-being, not just physical and mental, but also financial and leadership, and being able to move forward as a leader. And so can you just unpack that sense and sensitivity and how we can actually utilize that? What empirical data or maybe practice can you share with us right now on that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I believe that we know so much more than we think we know, but so often we get stuck in our head, or we get stuck in what the news is saying or what others are telling us to do, when really we've got such an extraordinary intelligence that's streaming through us constantly. But we forget to remember that we actually know. And so when we could start to drop below the neck and start to tune into something as simple as breath pattern or heart rate, or how do my muscles feel right now? And we can start to become much more astute to actually what's emerging for us. Life is constantly emerging, constantly informing us whether to go right or go left, whether to speak up or to hold back. And we know this, we know it. So when we can start to practice it by just slowing down enough to listen, to sense am I tensing up? Can I relax into this moment right now? And then trust that I actually do know what I should say next. I actually do know when I should lean forward or hold back. And so, it's not something that we can teach each other to do, but we can remind each other that it's as simple as a pause. It's as simple as slowing down how you speak. It can be as simple as taking a few breaths before a meeting, after a meeting, or during that meeting, to allow your body to become more coherent or more of in a more clear state, so that we can sense into what's next. And listen, we can all do this, and we're all already doing it. I think the big thing is just to trust yourself a lot more than you think you should.
Really lovely. What would you say would be your, you mentioned the mentoring. Is there a quote or a mantra that you maybe developed yourself or got from a mentor that you use to this day? that helps you stay centered, that helps you get present, that helps you trust that inner intuition?
Yeah, I've got a handful of them, but I'll try to bring up the most important, I think, for me right now. The first one, just going on what we were just talking about, is remember who you are. Just remember who you are. I have to tell myself that all the time. Remember who you are, because when we do, when we remember that we're not just a brain on a stick, that we're actually this extraordinarily intelligent being that is sensing into every emerging moment, then we really do speak, act, and live from our best place. And then the other reminder for myself, and I call them reminders because I think that we, like I said before, we do know this, is that it goes by fast. This is speeding right by us. And honestly, I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to miss one moment of my life. So when I remind myself that it's all going by so fast, it's just that kind of, it's that reminder to slow it down, because I can move really fast. Slow yourself down and take a step at a time, and you'll know exactly the step that you need to take forward.
That's lovely. That's a great way to operate, for sure. What would you say for someone who's, lack of a better term, autopilot is on that hyperdrive, and that they're so oriented towards that fast pace, the next thing, and they're on hyperdrive, that it feels so unnatural for them to get quiet, to get calm, to check in with themselves internally? What would you say to someone in that situation, where maybe they've reached a certain level of success and they're used to that high state of stress and being burned out and really maintaining that, even though it's not sustainable? What would you say to someone like that who's a leader in that
talking to
situation?
myself, because I'm definitely one of those, high achievers, high performers, type A's, our brains love shortcuts. And so autopilot isn't a terrible thing, but I think that we have to be aware that not everything can be shortcutted, especially when it comes to human relationships. So when we start to take shortcuts, and I've burned myself in the things that really can't be automated, we start to actually create more work for ourselves in the long run. So I think it's knowing what can be automated and what really does need your human touch and your pause and your more unique expression or unique way to connect with others. So it's knowing which one to slow down and which one's okay to be moving quickly. I hope that makes sense.
What would be the first thing that someone would do in order to know that? Because there's not knowing and operating off of something that's just been working. So there's momentum going in that direction. And then there's stepping out of that space and into the knowing. What's the gap there? And how could someone, what would be the first thing that someone could do to know?
Yeah, so I have this saying that I actually made up. I used to train a lot of college football players. For 15 years, I trained a college football team in yoga and mindfulness and mental performance.
Nice.
And the little tagline I had for them, or reminder, was feet planted, eyes steady. Because if you think of a football player getting ready before a play, they've got to be really grounded. And once we're grounded, we're able to actually launch forward more quickly. We're able to explode into the next moment. But we have to remember to plant our feet and steady our gaze, because that's going to set us up. So that is, I think for all of us, before we go running forward, is just to know where our feet are on the ground. It's just like feet planted, eyes steady, just hold on, sister. We like to say stability before mobility. Like we have to find our stable ground in order to launch. And so that's also a reminder I use for myself, just to and as you get more adept at it, you don't need to, take 5 breaths all the time. Sometimes it's just knowing where you are, that proprioceptive awareness. Where am I in space? Okay, I'm good. Let's go.
Mm. Yeah, nice. That's great. So that's a great tip and a great practice there. With regards to maybe someone looking into this a little bit further, are there some books that are go-to books for you? Maybe a top reference that you would source?
Yeah, I think as a leader, one of my favorite books, I've read it many times, is The Tao of Leadership. And it's translated by John Hynden, I believe is his last name, but it's The Tao of Leadership. So Tao is Tao. And I think that is a must read for any leader. It's beautifully, beautifully translated.
Okay, fantastic. And since you brought up Tao, and we because I like to practice in that, we know that's the way. And what was your takeaway from that book? I'm interested in.
So I think, for the most part, it's go slow to go fast, allow to actually manifest. So it's everything that comes, I would say, unnaturally for the typical type A entrepreneur leader. But it's really in trusting and letting go that you will then know how to be, what to do, which goes back to how we began our talk today.
Boy, that's really interesting, and definitely I know for a lot, myself included, that is a challenge to get to wrap the mind around doing less to have more, having the experience of releasing as opposed to controlling every little bit of that piece. So let's tie this together with the mindfulness and the body mind wellness that you're shifting into with this new trend. And I'll use the trend because you use that, but really it seems to me that, you've said this theme that's going throughout our conversation today is that things are moving so quickly. The pace of change is moment to moment, literally now. We're not seeing a decade before something is transitioning, whether, we've got science and we've got so much intertwined within what's going on with regards to virus and because you really work with the mind piece as well, we know we've got the mind and the body connected. How can we, and maybe you can give us like top 3. What are your top 3 ways that we could harness the power of our mind to help restore, maybe even boost our body's natural immunity, and in doing that, really showing a way that we can lead our own bodies in a direction that we really want it to go, as opposed to, being the effect of this very fast-paced momentum of doom and fear that's perpetuated in our current society. Can you share a little bit on that? Maybe 3 top tips would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I can try. It's such a big topic. Well, first, I just want to remind everybody that 80% of the information that's streaming through our body is through our whole body, right? Because it's not separate, is going from body to brain. So in many ways, our biology becomes our psychology. The state of our body, the state of our nervous system, the state of our gut health, the state of our immune system is going to affect how we feel. It affects our mood. I woke up this morning, I was just not feeling great. I don't know what I ate yesterday. I didn't sleep as well. And my mood is just a little off, so we're so affected mentally by the state of our body. And there is information going obviously from brain to body, but I've focused a lot of my career on how do we stabilize our systems and optimize our physical systems so that we can perform optimally mentally. And so the bridge between the mind and the body is the breath. The breath is our direct knob to the state of our nervous system. So just by changing our breath pattern, we change our physical system, which then changes our mental patterns. So just taking 5 coherent breaths, which means to inhale for about 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds. 3 minutes of that can literally change your state of being. So breath is the most powerful tool we have in shifting our state. It's just often overlooked because it's so obvious, it's simple, and we can't buy it. And, I know there are apps for it, but, it's right at our fingertips. So I would just say breath, breath, breath. Understand what's happening with your breath and start to understand that when you change your breath, you change your psychology as well. So that's my biggie before I go on.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. And I think that right now we need the simple tools and we need those simple reminders that are, if you're going to practice nothing else, it is that breath. So I like that. And I like that you're wrapping that up in a nice piece there. So before we end, is there anything else that you'd like to share, knowing what we're experiencing right now in the current culture and just anything that's relevant? The breath is, of course, perfect. But this piece that now you're going in with the mental wellness, I just saw this statistic that there were more suicides from the beginning of this COVID to yesterday in the entire last year, and another, like the framework of suicide rate has just gone through the roof, far and above even what we've experienced with the flu. And while it's, with COVID, with this experience, knowing that, it's touched me personally. So I have that piece that makes me really hyper aware of and sensitive physically in my body. I'm sensitive to everyone's needs. We've got so many different varying ideas, but the mental piece is so crucial. And yes, the breath is absolutely vital. And if we could just stop there and that would be it, that'd be great. But the truth is, the thoughts that people keep thinking are definitely affecting the body. And is there something that you could elaborate as we wrap this conversation that could really set things apart on that mental aspect specifically?
Yeah, well, and thank you for naming that, because I've been touched as well by suicide just in, the last couple of days. So yes, our minds are a reflection of the state of our body and vice versa. And when we can allow a busy mind the opportunity to settle and to clear, and we have incredible capacity to heal. And it can be as simple as silence, as nature, being in nature, just spending time in nature. I know that being with each other is so needed and always not available right now, but to give ourselves, our physical selves, time and space away from the news. We know this, but in nature, to allow all of those mental patterns. And for a lot of us, these are new habits. I've been checking my phone news like way more than I ever have. It's not a good habit I've picked up, and it really does affect me mentally, which then, as you're saying, affects us physically because I'm holding more stress in my body. So we have to become super aware of what are these new habits that we're picking up? And also, can we get out and plug ourselves back out into nature, which is going to help us to reverberate or to rebalance ourselves back into our most stable, clear, and calm state of being. So, I think besides breath, nature and silence are next in line, no doubt, as far as quick healing and quick state shifting techniques.
Yeah, and that definitely, it's antithesis kind of to the leadership of go and pound and make things happen. But those top execs that I work with and people in let's say the high-powered companies, Google, and there is that built-in piece of silence. You know, they build in pods where you can go and just be silent and unplug. And I know, I mean, even Steve Jobs, who created, we know this, he unplugged. He didn't let his kids have those very addictive devices. And he was very much connected into the, we'll call it Waldorf idea of more connected to the earth, arts, elements of nature. And we, especially during this time, like you're saying, need it more than ever. We really need it more than ever. And we can't forego who we are at our essence in lieu of, a pill or a shot, because the price of that, not just monetarily, but physically and emotionally on our well-being is probably a price that not a lot of us are fully willing to pay, even though we've been fed this idea that that's the only solution. And you just named clearly solutions that cost nothing, and yet they are so invaluable. And then, if someone could bottle it, we've got apps to breathe now.
Of course.
Apps to drink your water, apps to go out in nature. It's like, okay. But the fact of the matter is it costs nothing, but your mindful attention. And I love how you put the pieces together and the sense and the sensory of the body. I can actually feel that. It's very visceral. Cara, thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful that you took your time today to share with us some beautiful insight. And your book again, The Verge, will you tell us just a little bit about that book and where we can get that?
Yeah, so the book is On the Verge, Wake Up, Show Up, and Shine. And it really is pointing to our natural state of aliveness and intelligence. So it's just underneath the busy mind. And so I offer practices and strategies to access, to drop back into, to experience yourself in your natural state. And, something that you said before, Stephana, is, all of these solutions, I mean, of course, every article you read, the 5 this, the 10 that, we're all stating the obvious, but I believe right now that nature, good quality foods, good hot sleep hygiene, stillness, silence, rhythm, play. I mean, all the obvious is they're no longer luxuries. They're actually essentials, and we really need to put them at the top of our list when it comes to our own mental wellness. And here's the thing, it's all free. Like, we don't even have to go out of our quarantined houses to really tap into the most powerful tools available.
It's so fantastic. Thank you so much. I found that those simple things in the Tao of Leadership, all of this ties together. So it'll be nice. I'm going to get this transcribed and also have some pieces. So for our guests listening, if you're listening or if you're watching, be sure to catch either the replay or find out all the details about Cara Bradley, and carabradley.com is where you can reach her, but I'll make sure that those links are in the website below. Thank you so much for joining us for Powerhouse Leaders Podcast. Until next time, be well, lead from your inner powerhouse, think and focus from your powerhouse. Make sure you are connected and your powerhouse is on. You're not to get your power from someone else. That's not where our power comes from. Our power comes from that internal source, and we want to be reconnected to that. So we're working on that. Cara gave us some very valuable insight, and so we'll all use that and apply that to creating and leading a life that we love, leading businesses that we love, that make positive, profound impacts planet-wide. Until next time, again, I'm Stephana Johnson, and be well. Thanks so much, Cara.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Goodness.